All right, lads and lasses and good day, mates. Welcome to another episode of the Toon podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's #1 podcast for all things Newcastle United. Today, we are going to be talking about the game against Palace at St James's Park in the League Cup. It finished 3-2 on penalties to the mighty Mags, and that game finished for us at 7:30 this morning if you're in Queensland, where we are, or 8:30 this morning where Keegs is. So first of all, some hellos from the boys. Keegs, I'll start with you down in Victoria. How you going, mate?
Very good, mate. How are you?
Usual mix of exhaustion and no, I'm just basically exhausted.
Yeah.
I woke up at 5:30 this morning. I did that 5:30 thing this morning. I woke up and I did that mistake of checking the time. And as soon as I checked the time, I realized it was shortly before the game. Checked our chat, saw the team line up, and I was like, oh, well, that's it. I'm going to have to listen to this now. Wasn't anywhere to watch it, which is a right pain in the ass, but did at least get the radio on the official club website, so that was good. And Mark,
shout out to Dimmy.
First of all, congratulations, mate. I'll let you decide if you want to tell people why. But
yes,
mostly I'm just interested in how many beers you're in at the minute. How are you going, mate?
A couple of wines, one beer. But yeah, pop the sparkling Shiraz tonight. Celebrate the fact that we actually got a mortgage approved. So it's like all proper grown-up shit. It's a bit scary, but exciting at the same time. But yeah, so got a new house. Just trying to finalize all that stuff now and hopefully move in Christmassy time. But yeah, just I'm absolutely drained from work. Got a whole new big grant for a new microscope at work as well. Trying to organize all sorts of different systems, and generally, as you said, woke up at the wrong time in the morning, checked the phone, and didn't get back to sleep.
Oh, it's a nightmare, isn't it? I'm just wondering
how bad is it though?
Boozer. Oh, mate, that's I know it's the League Cup, but I just wonder, like, is it so bad that they don't bother? Is the reason why there wasn't coverage that it's just not that interesting to people outside the UK? Maybe, is it just the expense of the people and the equipment and everything else that goes with it? Because it's very unusual these days to not have at least a dodgy stream somewhere, and there didn't seem to be. They
have streams everywhere on every single game, seems like, these days. So the fact that we were the one team that didn't seem to have a stream, I mean, I found a dodgy stream online. I tuned in and it was the bloody Spurs game. I'm like, it said Newcastle versus Crystal Palace, and it was the Spurs game. I'm like, how rude. But anyway, I'm not going to bitch and moan too much, but it's probably like us living in Australia where we're used to just being able to watch every single game, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, you get used to it, don't you?
Yeah.
Probably just as well that game wasn't on the TV. It was bloody boring for the most part. We'll get into that in a second. Just before we do that, if you're watching on YouTube, please, if you like what we do, give that like button a good bit of a pounding. If you wouldn't mind, that would be wonderful. And subscribe if you like as well to get all the notifications for when new episodes drop in your inbox. That would be wonderful. And if you're on audio, please consider giving us a nice review. That would be champion as well. Thank you very much. So, moving on, let's talk about this game that finished at 7:30 or 8:30 this morning. It was Newcastle against Crystal Palace at St James's Park. Let's bring up the teams. I'll read out the teams as we predicted earlier in the week. We went with Pope in goal. Then it was Target, Botman, Lascelles and Manquillo. Then it was ASM, Jolinton, Shelby, Anderson, Murphy and Wood. That's what we predicted. The actual team was Nick Pope, Manquillo, Jamal Lascelles, Dan Byrne, Matt Target, John Joe Shelby, try that again, Sean Longstaff, Joe Linton, Elliot Anderson, Alan St. Maximin and Chris Wood. So Keegan, I'll come to you first. The differences between our predicted and the actual were essentially Botman we thought would start, but in fact it was Dan Byrne. I suppose you could just flip a coin on that one. And Murphy didn't start. Instead, it was Sean Longstaff, and I guess Elliot Anderson must have been pushed out onto the wing. So just looking at that lineup, what was the first thing you thought when you saw that lineup? How did it scream at you? Also, why don't you mention the subs as well? Because the subs are pretty good.
Yeah, well, that should have kept people quiet about we've got nothing on the bench. So that was a positive to start off with. But, yeah, I thought that was sort of how I thought it was going to happen as well. I thought Fraser might have got in ahead of Anderson, but we'd since found out that he had a knock and he wasn't available for the game anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much how I thought it would play out, and I thought it was going to be a good opportunity for guys who hadn't played on the weekend to get a run out and get a game under their belts, especially guys like John Joe and ASM who are coming back from sort of longer injuries. I thought it was going to be really important for them to get a good shift under their belts.
Mark, any surprise that Murphy didn't start and Sean Longstaff did, considering how much running around Longstaff's been doing lately in the league and the fact that Murphy hasn't really been having that much game time? Any surprise with that one?
I don't know. I mean, Murphy's played a bit of game time the last couple of matches. I guess it all depends on what. I guess it's what Howard decides he wants to play against Chelsea, and if he was giving people rest, because if he's gonna rest ASM again against Chelsea to start with and bring him on off the bench, then it kind of makes sense. Give Murphy a bit of a break and let him have at it against Chelsea. Apart from that, like the rest of the team kind of is what we expected to see. Joe Linton was coming off a suspension, so he didn't have a game up his sleeve. So it was get him some game time. That was fine. The rest of them, like I think you've got to be wondering what Jamal Lewis has got to do to actually get a game at this point for us. Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's probably time to think about moving him out, because if he can't get in the League Cup, because we're effectively playing what is mostly our first choice left back, and Dan Burn fills in for him when he needs to. I just don't see where Lewis is fitting into this team at the moment. But look, it's giving players who have done their shift in the league a bit of a breather, while still keeping them on the bench to come on and get us through in the end.
Yeah, speaking of that bench, so we had Karius as the replacement keeper, then we had Trips, Botman, Shaw, and then it was Lewis, as you mentioned, Murphy, Almiron, Willock, and Bruno G. Keegs, if we were trotting out that team, this team that started in the league, how confident would you be of this particular lineup?
After the 90 minutes, I wouldn't be very confident because it was shit. I probably know 70 minutes until they sort of started changing it up. It was pretty shit. But I think if you change sort of one or two in at a time, I think there's enough quality with the other guys on the bench to sort of cover their shortcomings, I guess. But yeah, look at it. We've played lots of Premier League games with the teams a lot worse than what we started with this morning. So yeah, I thought it was a bit weird that Karius was on the bench, but Darlow was on the bench for the Southampton game. Like,
I did think of that earlier on. Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just a bit weird.
But you take that first team and you maybe take out Lascelles and Manquillo and substitute basically Botman and Trips. And possibly Anderson for Bruno G. Well, yeah, Anderson for Bruno G, or Shelby for Bruno G, maybe. And you're not that far off a pretty good team. So I guess the reason why I was asking the question was that, Mark, are we starting to see a bit of squad depth finally after all these bloody years? Are we starting to see Newcastle have just a smidge of some decent squad depth?
So I'm going to put this into perspective. 12 months ago, absolutely not. None of these players that are probably played today would have been deemed good enough. Like, apart from the ones that we've brought in, obviously, you look at, ASM was the only out that we had. We've brought Wood in. Murphy was not good enough. Anderson was nowhere near. Shelby and Joe Linton were no good. Lascelles wasn't good enough. Manquillo wasn't good enough. None of these players were deemed good enough, and I think Howard's brought them in. He's got everyone fit. He's got everyone bought into the style of football he wants to play. And now it doesn't really matter who comes in. They're capable of coming in and doing the job that Eddie Howe wants them to do. And it's about formation, it's about work rate, it's about the tactics involved. And that's the biggest thing for me, is that even though there's question marks over the quality of some of these players, and I think we've basically seen the fact that we've brought in all of our substitutes and we've kind of kept a clean sheet. We've looked like we were defensively solid, but we didn't offer a lot going forward, let's be fair, in the first half. And it wasn't really until we started to bring those extra bodies off the bench that have that extra creativity that we started to really dominate the game and actually create some chances. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that offensively, we're still probably a little bit of quality short. Defensively, I think it's more about the formation, the tactics, and the style of play that we put out there. That is all down to Eddie Howe, where, yes, we've got good players, but we're playing a very, very good formation and everyone's bought into this. Everyone needs to attack from the front. Everyone needs to defend from the back. So other way around maybe. But, look, it's a case of, I don't think that the likes of Murphy, Lascelles, Manquillo, they're all good workhorse players, but I don't think they're that next level player. But the fact that we can bring them in and rely on them to do a job while having that quality on the bench because we've managed to rest those players, that's a huge plus for us.
No, absolutely. And just on the striker front, of course, we've already took steps to address that with Isaac, Big Doug. I actually wouldn't mind watching some extended highlights to see how Manquillo gets on, because at one point he was looking all right and then he kind of fell off a cliff. And obviously now he's not getting a lot of game time. And I'd like to see how he got on, because I'm not too sure about him. Let's move on anyway to Crystal Palace. It was Johnson in goal, then Klein, Ward, Tompkins, and Gui. Then it was Mitchell, who John Anderson said was absolutely terrible this entire game. Then Elise, Hughes, Miljokovic, Ayew, who is just terrible, and Matata. And the subs bench as well: Wentworth, Rodney, Barmer, Ozol, Riedwald, Phillips, Ibowie, Gordon, and Massimento. Apparently that bench is basically made up of youngins. The starting lineup. Anyway, we'll come back to start. We'll come to the bench in a minute. The starting lineup. Keegs. What do you reckon? What do you reckon of that lineup from Palace? What can you derive from the intention of Vieira coming up with this particular starting lineup and the subs?
I don't think Patrick was too concerned with what really was going to happen tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was listening to a friend of the pod, Chris Waft, speak, and he said he was talking to one of the Athletics Crystal Palace correspondent, and he said they were going to send a team of kids up. So I sort of thought it was going to be a walk in the park. So it was a bit better than I thought it was going to be. But obviously, like you said, all the kids were on the bench. So yeah, I mean, they didn't really like. I was like you, like everyone down here. We didn't have any footage to watch it on. So I made my radio debut listening to a game, which I'd never done before. So that was an interesting experience, a good experience, but an interesting one. So, but judging by what the radio commentary was, they didn't really threaten the goal at all during the game.
Yeah, we'll come on to the game in a minute. Mark Keegs has never listened to a game on the radio until now. Doesn't know he's born, does he?
Listen to them all
Back
the
in the
time.
day, man.
No, it's like 3 p.m. kickoffs in the UK, and it's like it's the only thing you've got to go on.
Yeah, well, that's like I said to Lee, like we've had all the games have always been televised here. Like I've never had to listen to the radio because I've always had the option to watch the game. So yeah, this was the first game that I'd actually.
And that's the thing, is like for us here, all the games are televised apart from like this is the only game that we couldn't get even a dodgy stream of. So it's pretty hard to take.
I nearly rang up our Saudi overlords for a be out box, but I couldn't organise one to get here in time.
Yeah, and it was a record home crowd as well, so you feel like it's a little bit even more hard done by the fact that it's not on TV when nobody could actually get tickets for the game because the fact that it wasn't a sold out crowd was nothing down to the Newcastle fan. It was the fact that Crystal Palace brought a minibus up for their fans.
Well, just coming to this team though, Mark. Anybody in this team that kind of made you think, oh, he might be a bit of a threat? I mean, you would obviously think of Ayew, but he's for me, he's just dreadful. It's like he's forgotten how to play football as a striker.
I use this hit and miss player, but I think it was less about who was in the team and who was missing for Crystal Palace. The fact that you look at that team and there's no Easy or Zaha, you know, those are the two main threats that whenever anybody talks about Crystal Palace, those are the two names that you kind of everybody's going on about now. And, you know, Rio Ferdinand's on TalkSport or whatever telling us that we should be going after Wilfried Zaha in the summer. You know, it's like, well, you know, I don't see it. Like Zaha is to Palace what ASM was to us last season, where he's like their main out and he's the pure focus of all of their attacking energy. So without him, there was that.
So was Chris Wood at Burnley. We still went and got him, but that was obviously a different time, and we had a different need at that point.
Exactly.
Zaha's a great player, but I don't know if he would necessarily fit in this team. Plus, he whinges a lot. Anyway, I
don't think we would spend as much that would be needed on Wilfried Zaha for his age, for the position that we need him in.
No, fair enough. All right, so let's move on to the game. So yeah, there was a crowd of 51,660 in at St James's Park, and as you say, a minibus from North London. Is it North London, South London? I don't know. Anyway, minibus came up with 562 Crystal Palace fans. You know, well done to those guys for making that long trip on a school night all the way from London to the northeast, and presumably all the way back again afterwards with nothing to show for it. That is actually the highest ever gate for the League Cup at St James's Park. Who knows? The fact that it wasn't on TV anyway might have been the reason for the increased crowd. Who knows? I suspect it's got a lot more to do with how we're going in the Premier League, mind you, and the good vibe around the place. So let's just talk about the first half because, well, let's have one sentence about the first half. Because I was lying there in bed, sort of like knackered, but I couldn't sleep. I had the headphones on, and like I don't think anything of great note happened in that first half. There was a shot from Palace that Pope did well to save and tip around the post, and I think there was a header to Longy maybe or Burn. I'm not sure. Didn't do much trouble towards the goal. It went over the top, I think. And that probably was literally about it in the first half. It was very scrappy, very disjointed. I mean, to be expected because that's a first 11 that hasn't played together very much in any kind of competitive setting. So you can kind of understand why it was a bit crap. Before I go on to this, that's literally it. Before I move on to the second half, did anybody want to add anything that I might have missed about the first half?
I don't think there was much to miss, was there?
It was absolutely crap. All right, so second half. I mean, second half wasn't much better, really. And it's very hard to say too much when you're listening and you're kind of having to use your powers of imagination. And you listen to Razor talk and listen to Anderson, just can't get man, and all this kind of stuff, you know. And it's hard to know exactly how it went. I've seen 2 minutes of video highlights on the Crystal Palace official YouTube channel. That's literally it. And they did like 2 penalties at the end and they cut it right at the end, just like that's it, done. Didn't want to linger on it. And it looked for all in the world like it was the Newcastle show. I don't think it was to start with, though. I think basically the turning point was around about 65 minutes when we brought on some of the big hitters, some of the big boys. Trips came on, Botman came on, and Bruno came on for Banquillo, Burn, and Longy. And then shortly afterwards, I think it was only 5 minutes later or something, Miggy came on for Anderson. And from that point onward, my impression anyway, listening to it, Keegs, I'll come to you first, was that the game had basically swung almost entirely to Newcastle. And did you get the sense that it was either going to be a matter of time before we scored, or like me, did it just start to feel to you like it was going to be one of those games where we could just play extra time, additional extra time, some more extra time, some Liverpool extra time, and then still not score a goal?
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that's what the commentary said as well. Basically, as soon as them guys come into the game, we just played the game on our terms, and the actual speed of the game picked up as well. So that's what the quality brings with guys like Bruno and Trippier and things like that. But yeah, it just with no real clear-cut chances. Well, it didn't really. I think Burn had that header, but apart from that, like there was no real big chances to think like, oh, we're gonna, like, it's coming. But like we had a lot of the ball towards the end, but didn't really threaten. Or didn't it didn't sound like we threatened much.
Mark, there was that chance to Burn. I think there was about 2 other decent chances. We spoke about this just before coming on here. What did you make of Valencia Maximin and his, in particular, his crosses into the box? Now, again, you may not have seen those highlights. I don't know if you've seen them or not.
I have.
I've seen.
Yes, no,
You have seen them. Okay, so you would have seen
Yeah.
some of the delicious passes that ASM was doing. Did it look a little bit more like he's starting to become? It's very hard to say. It's such a very small snapshot. But did you get the slightest feeling that he might be starting to get the idea with this team and think, I've got to start putting these crosses in? You know, he always wants to take on his man at every single opportunity. But when I watched those brief clips, it just looked for a moment like, bloody hell, you know, if he could put those kind of crosses in a game day in the Premier League, and you've got Wilson on the end of it, we're going to be banging them in, because some of those crosses were absolutely sensational, weren't they?
Yeah, no, look, he's been frustrating in the past. There's no doubt about it. He's always been that player that wants to take one too many players on and ends up losing the ball in bad areas, or, you know, an attack breaks down through him. He seems to have really got it through that. You know, he needs to be this team player, and he seems to, like, as you said, it's like, look, it's us looking at some highlights. I didn't watch the game. I didn't listen to the game. I've watched the NUFC TV highlights, the extended highlights that they had. The second half, they looked really dangerous. Apart from that Burn header, didn't really create a clear-cut chance. But St. Maximin was putting some really good balls in. He got to the point where he was beating that one player that he needed to play, like, to beat, to get into space, to then be able to create something for someone else. And he was taking that opportunity to cross the ball in or play that crossfield pass to Miggy. You know, he was doing really well. And, you know, if that's the start of what he can do, then, you know, I want him back in the side, and I want him playing like that every week, because with Miggy on fire, you know, you want that sort of like dual wing threat going into the offense, where the defense don't know who they're going to cover, and they can't double team Maxi. Otherwise, it's going to leave Wilson or Miggy or, you know, Bruno or somebody free that are proven they can take those chances. So for me, like, Maxi needed to be that team player and be able to kind of like pick out those passes and be able to sort of play his teammates in more, just to kind of take advantage of the fact that he was seen as the big threat, and that he was actually like drawing defenders to him, which was freeing up his teammates. And if he can start and do that, then I'm actually really genuinely excited to see what he can do. And especially if you throw Wilson in or Isak in, you know, it's starting to look pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it was the smallest of possible smallest sample sizes, but who knows? Maybe it is the start of ASM's rejuvenation. I actually thought Murphy was next on the conveyor belt of Eddie Howe improvements, but maybe it's ASM. Maybe he's darted in there first to get the Howe treatment. Yeah. So that was basically it for the second half. There wasn't a great deal to say much more than that. It was 3 minutes extra time that petered out, nothing much, and it went to penalties. And for once, I mean, when I was thinking about this game, I was thinking, all right, so there's no extra time. That's a bit shit. But by the time that second half finished, I was kind of like, oh well, thank God that's no extra time, because, like I say, you know, we could still be sitting here right now, 12 hours later, and still haven't scored a bloody goal. just felt like one of those kind of games, you know. I mean, for as much as we were trying, it just didn't look like it was going to get sucked into the net at all. And also before this game, I shared a little anecdote where, because what we got right now, we had this League Cup game. We're on a great run, and at the weekend, we'll come to it soon, we've got the Chelsea game, and then there's the World Cup. So you've got to get this league game out of the way, and then you've got the Chelsea game, and you're done for the World Cup. And we're on such a brilliant run. It reminded me of the time a few years ago, I think, under Pardew, when we were in the Europa League, and we got either to the quarters or the semis, I forget which one it was, against Benfica. and it was midweek. And then on the weekend we were playing the Mackhams. It was the Townway derby, and I had this feeling inside me that we had to beat Benfica, because if we didn't and we lost, we'd go into that Mackham derby game, the one that you absolutely have to win, on the back of a disappointing defeat. Not just the defeat, but the fact that you've gone out of the Europa League so close to the final. And the guys would carry that into the derby. They'd have the wrong mindset and would probably end up losing. And what happened? We lost against Benfica, and we went and lost against the Mackhams the few days later. And I had this horrible feeling that if we didn't get past Crystal Palace today, then it would just take that kind of edge of confidence maybe off the cockiness, if you want to put it like that. But the good vibes, the good the drive behind a team, and then that would knock us against Chelsea, and that's a game I really, really want us to win. So thankfully, so when it gets to penalties, I'm thinking, oh shit, so Newcastle are absolutely terrible at penalties. The stats were like, we've only won one set of penalties in the last 10 shootouts, once in 10. Absolutely, it's like England level penalties. Absolutely bloody terrible. So I was slightly nervous lying there with my headphones on. I couldn't watch it. I'm having to listen to it. You can't see things. You can't make your own mind up. You can only get what you can get from Razor and John Anderson. And it's like, oh God, this is absolutely killing me here. And then, of course, Chris Wood steps up to take the first penalty. And I'm thinking, oh, geez, this guy, as much as he did score recently, he also missed a few recently as well. And I was thinking, why? I mean, surely one of the other guys can go first and get us going, and then someone like Chris Wood can take a penalty, when the ball's rolling already, but he didn't. He went first and scored an absolute blammer.
Yeah,
Didn't get the keeper.
I was happy with that. His penalties are good.
I was happy with him as well.
Yeah,
he's a good penalty
I've seen
taker.
a few of his penalties. He's a great penalty taker.
He took a penalty for us not so long ago as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he smashed it.
Yeah,
it's just the whole thing around Wood, where he's really struggling to get the goals, and it's the penalties, and I've got this thing about the Benfica bounce around my head, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could do without this, and he blamed it, and I was like, oh, brilliant. Then of course, Palace come up to take their shot, Miljokovic, and bloody Popey saves it.
Popey.
You see it on the screen here. Dives to his left.
That was a great save.
Right, his left. Yeah, it did sort of like a cat's arm kind of wow. No, you're not going in, kind of little kind of waft of his arm.
I wish our audio viewers could have seen that.
He jumps up, he's like to the crowd, he's like proper pumped straight away.
Big flex. Yeah,
Keegs, what a great way to start off a set of penalties, because obviously the fact that you saved that, all Newcastle have to do, and I say all because it didn't work out that way, but all we've got to do is score our remaining penalties.
Just score the penalties.
Score ours, and it doesn't matter what they do. But it doesn't matter what they do from this point onwards. We've got the advantage essentially.
We're in front.
I mean, first of all, the first penalty, and what a save that was. Brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I didn't see it till about 5 hours later on my lunch break when I could actually look at the highlights. But
yeah,
they pumped it up
at the time.
Yeah. So it was very. It's just that split second. It's like when you watch it too, like when you listen to it on the radio. It's just all right, he steps up, and then there's that sort of second of nothing, and your heart sinks, and you're like, oh shit, what's going on here? And then, or you hear the cheering, and they're like, oh, you saved it, and you're like, yes. And then rinse and repeat. Next one steps up, and then you hear the cheer again. You score. You're like, okay, but that split second between them kicking the ball and then the next action, it feels like it's 10 minutes. Like it's so traumatic to listen to.
So you've been spoiled by the telly. I mean, that's 100%.
Listening
to it, man. Use your bloody imagination. It's bloody awful, man. Absolutely awful sometimes. But I mean, it kind of adds something to it as well, in a certain kind of way. So yeah, Miljokovic, he missed it straight away, and I was thinking, oh bloody hell, maybe. And then Trips comes up, does a great penalty, followed by Hughes. He scores, and then Big Joe scores. And then Ward scores, and every time they scored, it was just absolute silence. And every time Newcastle scored, it's like, rah! So you knew exactly what was going on before the commentators even told you. And then Mark Botman So Botman comes up to take a penalty. Were you at all surprised by that? A central defender? I mean, good on him for having the bollocks to do it, but like, why? A bit strange. Did not think it was a bit strange.
I would have thought others would have been in prime condition to take a penalty before him. Having said that, I don't think any of us can complain about Botman and his skill on the ball and his passing potential. So, you know, maybe, and I'm going to say this about the penalty taker choices. We don't know who put their names forward. We don't know if everyone put their names forward and Eddie Howe's just picked them because of who he thought they would have been. So I'm not going to like blame anyone for not taking a penalty, because I've seen a few people say, look, like Maxi and Miggy, they should have been taking penalties before Botman. Well, you know, maybe they've all put their name in the hat, and then, like, you know, Eddie Howe's looked at them all in training and said, well, you know what, Botman's taken penalties when we've done some tryouts and he's been absolutely clinical, you know. So look, end of the day, it wasn't a great penalty, but it certainly was a decent save by the keeper. I mean, Botman's tried to kind of wait for the keeper to move. He's blasted it down the middle. The keeper hasn't moved quite enough, and he's managed to get a hand on it. So, you know, there's worse penalties being taken, and there's worse penalties being taken in this match. But, you know, let's be honest, like Botman, you know, I've no problem with him taking penalty. He's probably future captain material for us, and he's a leader on the pitch, and he's probably said, look, you know, I want to take a penalty, I want to prove myself, I want to do what I need to do, and he's had the bollocks to stand up and actually do it. So, you know, fair play to him. Didn't come off this time, probably will next time. No more penalties for Botman. Well, apart from the commentary, we're basically saying it's like, oh, I hope he's got his penalty miss out of the way ready for the World Cup. It's like, you know, he hasn't been picked for the World Cup, and Holland haven't qualified, right?
Of course, yeah, forgetting about that. Right, so Botman misses, and you're thinking, all right, so if Crystal Palace score this, then we're back to square one. We've lost our advantage, and of course, Mateta comes up, takes a kick, and Popey saves it again to his left hand side. I think up to this point they'd all been down the same side, and he was, he was not getting to all of them obviously, but he managed to save these two. So Keegs, another tremendous save. I don't know if you saw this one or not, but it's not that often you see keepers making more than one save in a shootout, really, because it's, you know, usually you expect the strikers or the footy players to score from the spot, you know, and it's usually advantage to the person kicking the ball. But another cracking save by Nick Pope. Surely England's number one has to be, doesn't he?
Oh, he should be, but he won't be. I think we'll find out. The favourites will get announced while we're asleep, I think, during the night. So we'll wake up in the morning to all the outrage of who got in and who should have got in. Not that I don't give a shit anyway. I hope they get knocked out in the group stages, and Trippier and Botman come home early and get a good couple of weeks in and injury free. That's all that I hope. But anyway, great start.
Botman's not going anywhere, remember? So he'll still be in the town. But yeah, brilliant save by Popey there. Nick Pope, as you've just heard. That's Jack's little lass. So exactly. So then it's then up to Bruno, and this is what you just hinted towards, Mark. It's up to Bruno to be the hero of the hour, and I think the occasion got a little bit to him. He takes a run up. It's quite a long run up, and then he does a little stall as he comes towards the ball, and then he just absolutely belted over the top of the crossbar. Now, Mark, we were having a bit of a chat about this in our group chat, and we had a theory on what happened here. What do you reckon happened here?
He's taken this like absolutely monumental run up. He's stutter stepped. He's waited. He's halted. He's gone forward again, and he's clearly been waiting for the keeper to make a move. And the keeper stood absolutely rock solid still. And he's just like, he's got to the fact that he's like, shit, I've got to actually kick the ball now. And he's just got no idea. He's so straight onto the ball, and he's gone, okay. bashed it, and it's just gone sailing over the bar into the crowd. So, it was an awful, like, look, I'm not going to be, and I've seen people like slate him for this, and I'm never going to slate Bruno because he is an absolute legend for this club. He does so much for us, but holy crap, that was a bad penalty.
What did you say in the chat, Keegs? You hit the Palace fans in London?
Yeah, you said, they left with nothing. I thought they left with a penalty ball from Bruno because I reckon he kicked it up there. I thought he had the opening over in an Ashes series or something. The run up he had, I thought he was going to bowl some pace, come and block off that.
Oh yeah, went for 6 that one.
It was like he'd watched like the best penalty takers in the world and then just tried to
do
get
everything all at once,
and combine them together. And just
no, it was awful. It was like,
I'm gonna.
As I said, look, there's something to be said for Shearer, which is literally just run up, belt the crap out of the ball into the top corner, and the keeper's never getting to it. Like this whole, I know Lee, I know you are not an impressed fan of this stutter run up. It's just frustrating because let's be honest here though, nothing ever beats Genis in our preseason tournament. That was just a disgrace. At least Bruno was trying to do something, and he tried to do something and it never came off. But I was just kick it into the side netting next time or something. But yeah, look, I'm never gonna go off on him. It was a bad penalty miss. I'm not going to deny that, but let's be honest here. He does so much for this club right now. His over the top apologies on social media today seemed like so far wide of the mark as to what the fans actually think of him. It's like, look, dude, you've missed. It was a bad penalty, but seriously, it's not the World Cup final. We've gone through. Take a chill pill and you'll be out there for Chelsea and you can put it right then. It's not going to go away.
Yeah, it's not even a League Cup final.
Exactly.
Did you see the did you see the team photograph at the end? I think Keegs.
He looked gutted.
He looked absolutely.
I don't know if
devil.
that was real. I don't know if that was real.
Official account, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, was it? No, I just. Oh, was it?
Yeah.
He looked. I was just like.
Yeah. He was
like everyone's smiling. He's just like someone's just killed his dog.
Like his dog died. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Poor lad. I mean, he was very contrite
but you know
in his tweets, and I think that kind of reflects on the character of the lad as well. So hopefully
he's such a leader. He just wants to win and he wants to do well. And the fact that he's doing that for us, I can't fault the guy. It's like, he's so passionate about wanting to do well for us and wanting to propel us into, the stratosphere.
He's honest as well. He could have just simply said nothing and just, next time he gets an interview, just say, I'll do better. But he actually, off his own back, came out and sort of made an apology to the fans. And the fans were like, mate, who cares? He got through. Don't worry about it.
He's held his hand up and he's taking responsibility for something that didn't quite go right. And, pure respect to the guy for doing that. But seriously, none of us are blaming him for a penalty miss. It's like winning. It is a lottery. I think most of us understand penalty shootouts are a lottery, and it's just the fact that it was a team game, and it is a team game, and Nick Pope was the one that won it for us. It doesn't matter who did what. It was like we've gotten through. We're in the next round, onwards and upwards.
Yeah, and I'll just make this segue into Nick Pope since you mentioned him. So here he is saving the last shot from Ibui. He actually decided to go to his right for this one. I don't think he had to move very much by the looks of things. He looks pretty much central in his goal, so it obviously wasn't a very good penalty. And saves it, and he goes absolutely mental afterwards. He's punching the sky, and he's kind of waiting for everybody to run along and kind of grab him. And then I don't know if anyone saw it, but the lad just kind of like slowly trotted up to him, went, well done.
Yeah.
I noticed that. It was like 2 or 3 that were like, and the rest of them were just like, yeah, great.
And the cells ran up to him, and then the cells ran up to him and did that thing where it looks like he's going to jump into him or whatever, and he just went like on his toes and then stopped. And Nick Pope ended up jumping up by himself and back down again by himself, and he was like, "Oh, all right then, all right, cheers."
Yeah, thanks, thanks, mate.
Thanks for the cells, you shitbag. But anyway, so Nick Pope says it, and Newcastle go through 3-2 on penalties. I think it was 3-2 on penalties. To the 4th round. So Eddie Howe after the game said, in these games, the most important thing is that you're in the hat for the next round. He said it was a very difficult, tight game tonight. Probably everything we expected it would be. I don't think it was a great performance from us. Not wrong there, mate. We were a little bit disjointed. I think there's valid reasons for that. Yeah, the first 11. A lot of the players hadn't played for a long period of time, which is true. I thought they'd give everything, but we weren't particularly fluid in our play, and it got better at the second half, he goes on to say. And then for Pope, he says, I've got to say the first penalty save I thought was right out of the top drawer. Yeah, it was pretty good. There was actually a save in the first half that, again, I thought was right out of the top drawer as well. So it wasn't just in the penalty shootout, but he's been doing that for us all season. He's a very commanding figure, but he's kept goal with such low fuss. It sort of goes unnoticed what a difference he's made. And on the latter point, Keegs, Pope, he has kind of sort of slotted right in like he's been here all his life. And 9 times out of 10, when he's called upon, he does the business. Do you agree with Eddie that he's kind of got on with the job and he's gone a little bit unnoticed just how well he's doing? I mean, I assume Gareth Southgate will pick him, so he's not going that much under the radar. But yeah, how do you rate Pope?
No, I think he's definitely gone under the radar, like all, and rightly so. Like a lot of our praise and stuff like that's gone towards our back four with Trippier and Botman, Shah and Byrne. They've all, every game we've all, like not just us privately, but publicly, group chats and Twitter and things like that have been really, really strong when they're praised for like Trippier, Botman, etc. And Pope sort of just gets a little bit left out of that. So I'm glad last night or this morning he got his flowers and he get his moment like everyone else has had their moment.
Yeah, he's a key part of that rebuild defence, just like all the rest of them are. We're running out of time here. I think we've spent more time talking about the penalties than they actually took to take them. So let's just crack on a little bit. We're still going to get through Chelsea yet. Into the fourth round then, Newcastle go, where we have a choice of being drawn with, well, we don't have a choice, but we'll get drawn either with Bournemouth, Brighton, Leicester, Liverpool, Man City, either Man United or Aston Villa, Forest, Southampton or Wolves. Those are the Premier League teams. And then we've got Blackburn and Burnley in the Championship, and you've got Charlton, Lincoln, MK Dons in League One, and Gillingham in League Two. Now, Mark, I'll not insult your intelligence and ask you who you'd like to play against. Obviously, it's going to be one of the lower league teams, but who out of that list would you not want to see in the next round? Now, obviously, Man City, because it's Man City. I would posit possibly not Brighton. They seem to be on a really decent run at the minute, same as we are, of course, but they are putting some decent wins together, beat Arsenal at home 3-1 in the League Cup. I don't know what the Arsenal team was, but nonetheless, that's still a good win. Anyone outside those two? Obviously, Liverpool as well. Who do we really not want to see in this next round?
As long as it's at home, I don't actually fear anyone. I think we are so good at home right now with the home crowd behind us. I'll take anyone. I will even take Man City right now in the next round, as long as it's at home. And whatever will be, will be. If we beat them, we've got to be a good chance to win the cup itself. If not, chances are we're probably going to face them in the final anyway. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I sort of think probably being away is a better option in many ways, because the home team always has to come out, and that gives us a chance to get behind them. But anyway, Keegs, same question. Is anybody you desperately do not want to meet in this next round?
Yeah, I'd rather not play City, to be honest. So, but anyone rather than City. I mean, only because a lot of these teams they're not playing their best 11. Or neither are we. But Man City's just got another 11 that is just as good as everyone else's best 11. Yeah. So, I'd rather avoid them. But yeah, like I agree with Mark. I'm not if we get at home, I'm not really bothered by anyone.
All right. Like the big bollocks on display there by you two boys. Fair enough. Right, that'll do for the review of the Palace. Famous last words. That'll do for the preview. The review of the Palace game. I actually went on for 40-odd minutes, a lot longer than I expected. Let's quickly move on to the Chelsea preview. Premier League this Saturday. It's a late kickoff on a Saturday evening, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Against Chelsea at home. Newcastle unbeaten in the last 10 league and cup games, we can say now, and haven't lost at home in the last 8 Premier League games, 7 of which are this season alone, and we've won the last 3 at home. Chelsea, as you might have just noticed there, are out of the cup at the hands of City, beaten last night or this morning for us 2-0. Last time out in the Premier League, Chelsea were beaten by Arsenal in a tight 1-0 at the Bridge. And before that, they were thumped by Brighton 4-1 at the Amex in a pretty shocking return to his old stomping ground for Graham Potter there. And in fact, Chelsea last won on October the 16th in a 2-0 against what was at the time a god-awful Aston Villa. And they've also had on the road defeats to Leeds. That was a 3-0. And Southampton, that was 2-1. Let's have a look at the Newcastle team that we are predicting for this one. Now, Keegs, I'll come to you first. This team is pretty much what we've been going with for the last few games in the league. Exactly the same as what we go with the replacement of Murphy and the return of Joel Linton. So it'll be Pope, Byrne, Botman, Shaw, and Trips. Joel Linton, Willock, Bruno, Longstaff, Miggy, and Wilson. You didn't pick this team, I don't think. No, you did pick this team, didn't you? So, yeah, you're happy to go with Joel Linton instead of Murphy, and the rest of the team picks itself right now?
Yeah, I think for our available players, I think this is our best 11. So most of them are going to be well rested. Yeah, it pretty much picks itself at the moment.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Mark, no space in this prediction for ASM or Shelby, but I think ASM's probably the one you'd think of first. Would you try and shoehorn him in somehow? And if so, who would you be dropping to get ASM in this team?
Look, I think you'd potentially be dropping Willock or Longstaff to move Joe Linton into midfield to make room for Maxi on the left. But the way Willock and Longstaff have both been playing recently, you can't drop them. Like they're literally undroppable. Look, I'd be very surprised if it's anything but that team. I think Eddie Howe has proven that he's willing to give players the chance if they earn the place, if they earn the right to keep their position, they will keep their position in the team. Byrne at left back for me, I would much prefer to see Target there just for balance, but the way we play, we kind of almost end up playing with like a center, like a 3-man defense under this, and then Trippier can bomb forward and the 3 defenders can, like shuffle along and they get sort of like protection from Willock and Joe Linton and that. If Wilson's fit, he's got to start for me. I like Chris Wood and I like what he's done for the team, but he's just not the goal threat that Wilson is, and he doesn't link up as well with the rest of them. So yeah, for me, that team right there is potentially probably our best team at the moment based on form, and gives us options off the bench, which is what we've always been on about.
Yeah, I was going to say it's nice to have the option of ASM to come on and to move people around a little bit. Do we know, Keegs, if Wilson is in fact fit? He went off at half time, I think, didn't he, again the last game? So have you heard anything?
I think he was just crook. Like normally after 2 or 3 days, you'd feel yourself again.
Yeah, he apparently had an illness of some description. So whether it was cold or he had a bit of a gastro or something.
So I don't think he was actually injured. Yeah, he was just crook. So probably a good idea to keep him away from everyone for a few days as well, so he doesn't pass on his germs. So he should be fine, I reckon. Get a good day of training into him.
Right up. Let's have a look at the Chelsea team then. Yeah, right on. So we've got Mendy at the back, then Cucurella, Thiago Silva, Jalala blah blah blah, Aspilicueta Jorginho, Loftus-Cheek, Mount, Havertz, Sterling, and Aubameyang up top. That's the team I think that played against Arsenal last time out in the Premier League, the one that they lost 1-0 at the Bridge. Mark, Graham Potter's having a bit of a mixed go with Chelsea. It's still, I guess, early days for him. And having said that, I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter asking for him to get sacked, which is incredible. Although it was a pretty brave appointment in the first place, but nonetheless, there's still an awful lot of quality in this team. Where do you see the main threats coming?
I think firstly, Graham Potter is a good manager. I think he's come into a side that potentially is a bit out of form and still trying to find its identity. I think they need to give him time. Can't sort of like sack a guy after 3 games in charge. It was kind of like almost redeeming to see him absolutely hammered off his old side after they decided to poach him just because they had more money. Look, I think Aubameyang's always going to be a threat. I think Sterling's going to be a threat. My big thing is, if they can get, like Pulisic firing off the bench, then he's a massive threat for them. For us, though, I think, look, Cucurella has been absolutely appalling in the last couple of games. And I think we've got to literally just target him all game, like get Miggy like bursting forward at pace. You've got players who can play the ball into him really accurately. Trippier, you've got Bruno, you've got like Joe Linton on the other side, sort of like dragging people out of position. I think it's a really good game for us. We do typically play okay against Chelsea at home. A lot of the wins we've had have been against Mourinho, which, I always feel that it was a bit of like a Bobby Robson hangover for him. But look, I think Cucurella is a weak link there. If we can exploit it with Miggy, who's currently on fire, then, we stand a decent chance.
Yeah, and I think Sterling's a little bit underperforming at the minute, possibly because he's out of position. Mendy evidently isn't the rock solid goalkeeper that he has been. Cucurella, good lord, he's quick. If I remember rightly, he's pretty quick. So we're not going to do him for pace, I don't think. But I mean, if it's a windy day, his bloody haircut's going to be in his eyes, so you can just kind of run around
drag
like
factor.
that. Bloody ridiculous friggin' haircut that he's got. But you're right though. He was just terrible in that Arsenal game. Everything he did, he couldn't string a pass together to save his life. It was bloody awful. Yeah. All right, look, let's move on because we are rapidly running out of time here, and Keegan's going to fall asleep by the sounds of things. Let's have a look at the table. We've got Arsenal at the top on 34. It's Man City in second on 32. The mighty Mags in third. My God, I almost had to catch my breath a little bit there when I temporarily forgot where we were. We're on 27. Spurs in fourth on 26. Man United have managed to kind of pull themselves together a bit, and they're up into fifth now on 23. Brighton have an excellent season in sixth on 21. And Chelsea, our next opponents, in seventh there on 21 points, having lost the last two games by the looks of things on that form chart. I don't know about you, but I've had that on screensaver and on my phone wallpaper since the last game, and I know it's real life, but like it still feels
it's crazy, strange. Isn't it? It's absolutely mental. And all I can keep focusing on is that goal difference as well. When was the last time we had like a positive goal difference, let alone plus 17? It's just crazy. It's like incredible. Best joint defense in the league, and we're scoring goals. It's like the stuff of dreams. And
just on that, Keegs, I've noticed that Chelsea have scored 17 and have conceded 16 for a goal difference of just 1. So they're obviously conceding a few goals. That's not a huge number, 16 by any stretch, but it's not the smallest either. And they're not really scoring goals either. So can we take some solace out of that even?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we can. Well, we've proven we can score against anyone. I mean, put 3 past Man City. We should have had 2 against Liverpool as well.
United. Didn't score against Man United. Didn't score against Brighton.
Away.
So, yeah, but no, you've just said we can score against anybody, and I've just given you 2 examples.
Where you cut me off.
You can't do it. You can't do a Demi and stick another condition on the end. No, that's not fair. No.
There's asterisks everywhere.
No.
At home, we can score against anyone.
Fair enough, except Palace.
Should have scored.
No, should have scored. It's not the same as did score. All right. Let's get off the screen. So we'll just wrap this up. So some stats. In the Premier League era, we've won 13, drawn 12, and lost 29 at St. James's Park. Won 13, drawn 12, lost 29. It's about time I said that right. 47 goals for and 83 against. Graham Potter, as Brighton boss, he has not brought Chelsea to St. James's yet, but as a Brighton boss, he's had 3 games at St. James's. He's won 1, he's lost 1, and he's drawn 1. So he's experienced the full range of results at St. James's Park. That 29 losses, that needs to be rectified starting this weekend. And just to wrap this up, let's get Mark first, your score prediction, please. And scorers, if you want to take that chance.
Look, I want us to win. I think it's going to be a tough game. I'm going to go for 2-2. And I think Wilson will score and Miggy will score. Miggy's on fire at the moment. If I'm proven wrong, I will be the happiest person on the planet if we manage to win this game. I think it'll be a tough game for us.
I thought you were going to say dye your hair or something there for just a second. I thought, oh, you got another one.
No. I think Craig's taught us all a valuable lesson.
Yeah. Do not follow in the steps of Slim Craigie. Keegs, score, mate.
I'll go for 1-1. But yeah, I'm with you. Punish one to educate 1,000. So thanks, Craig, for that.
Who's the scorer? You got a chance your arm?
Wilson penalty.
Penalty? Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for a 3-2 Newcastle win. And I think Miguel will get 1 and Wilson 1 and Bruno 1. Why not? Bruno's got some making up to do. Let everybody down. Let the whole team down.
I think he'll be
That'd be
fired
all right,
up. He's going to be fired up for this game.
He will, but let's hope he doesn't get sent off. All right. So if results go our way against Chelsea, we could be 4 points from top. This is a stat that Slim Craigie gave us just before coming on. That's if all the results go our way, so everyone above us loses and we win. We go within 4 points of the top of the table going into the World Cup break. I mean, it's highly unlikely, but wouldn't that be something? Going into the World Cup, 4 points from the top. Jesus Christ. Fingers crossed, lads. You never know. It might just happen. All right. That will do for us today. I don't know how we managed to talk so long about a pretty boring Crystal Palace game, but by Christ, we waffled.
That we never,
Waffled
none of us
for 5
ever,
minutes.
none of us watched.
Yes, no,
We
it's actually
won.
good to
It's
watch.
exciting. We're through to the next
We
round
won.
of the cup.
We did. We did. We have to hope that we carry on with this winning mentality and take it into the next game with Chelsea, because we're going to have to be our best to beat these guys, I reckon. All right, that'll do for us. Thank you very much to Keegs and Mark for joining me today. If you have enjoyed what you have watched or heard, please give us a like on YouTube and subscribe if you like. And on your audio channels, give us a nice review if you don't mind, please. That would be absolutely smashing. And the next time we will be back will be for the review of the Chelsea game. Fingers crossed it's a win for the Mighty Mags going into the World Cup. Stay tuned whilst the World Cup's going on, because we will have 1 or 2 other things coming out on the podcast. There's no football to talk about except the World Cup, and but we'll think of some things to do. We'll stick something together.
Cole watch.
Cole
We'll be
watch.
on Garen Cole watch.
Garansky.
Garansky
Oh,
watch.
of course. Garan Qual, yeah, of course, the teenage Australian sensation that is going to be playing for Newcastle soon. All right, boys. Thank you again. That'll do for us, and hope to see everyone at the next one. Cheers, lads.
No worries.
Cheers, boys.
See you guys.